Turn to Daniel, if you will. The chapter that we're to look at tonight is the longest in the book, almost 50 verses. And so we're going to need to move right along with it in order to finish the chapter this evening, which we want to do. And I think the best way for the understanding is to basically read through it and then just comment as we go along. I'll not review a great deal, but I do remind you that Daniel is in Babylon. He arrived there about 606 BC. He was one of a number of fine young men who would be trained to serve in the king's court, and had determined in his heart that he was not going to defile himself. He was going to be true to the Lord, and God honored him for that. And he and the 3 Hebrew children, his friends, when they stood before the king, were 10 times wiser than any of the magicians or soothsayers that they had in all of his kingdom. And he gained favor with the king. Now, we come to chapter 2 and find that in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians, the astrologers, the sorcerers, and the Chaldeans, for to show the king his dream. So they came and stood before the king. So here is a dream of Nebuchadnezzar. When he woke up, he couldn't remember it. It must have frightened him. It was terrifying to him. Wanting to know what it was and what it meant, he called in all of the wisest men of the kingdom. Now, the magicians were those, of course, who could perform magic. The astrologers were those who studied the stars. The sorcerers were those who were supposed to be able to call up the dead. And the Chaldeans were the men that we would probably call philosophers, some of the wisest men in the realm. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac. Now it's interesting to pause here and realize that we very flippantly often say the Old Testament was written in Hebrew and the New Testament was written in Greek. But here is a section from here until the end of the 7th chapter that was written in Syriac, which was very similar to Aramaic. And why this was done, we don't have any simple answer. Many feel that when Daniel was sharing things that pertain particularly to the Hebrews, he would speak in Hebrew. And when he was sharing things that particularly pertain to the Babylonians, that he spoke in Syriac. So here is a section in the Word of God, several chapters, that are not written in Hebrew. They spake to the king in Syriac, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, the thing is gone from me. If you will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill. But if you show the dream and the interpretation thereof, you shall receive of me gifts and rewards and great honor. Therefore show me the dream and the interpretation thereof. They answered again and said, let the king tell his servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. Now they were playing for time. They knew that if the king could tell them what he had dreamed, they would come up with some kind of an interpretation. But for them to be able to tell the dream was an impossibility. And the king knew they were stalling for time. The king answered and said, I know of a certainty that you would gain the time, because you see the thing is gone from me. But if you will not make known to me the dream, there is but one decree for you. For you have prepared lying and corrupt words to speak before me till the time be changed. Therefore tell me the dream, and I shall know that you can show me the interpretation. Now that was wise on his part. I need to know what I dreamed, he said, first of all. I can't tell you what I dreamed. If I could tell you, I wouldn't need you. And I know that if you could tell me the dream, you could tell the interpretation. Well, the Chaldeans answered before the king and said, there is not a man upon the earth that can show the king's matter. Therefore, there is no king, lord, nor ruler that asks such things of any magician or astrologer or Chaldean. And it is a rare thing that the king requires. There is none other that can show it before the king except the gods whose dwelling is not with flesh. They were saying something wiser than they understood. No earthly person would be able to do such a thing. And they said it would only be if there was a God that could reveal it to us, that it could be made known. For this cause the king was angry and very furious, and commanded to destroy all the wise men of Babylon. And the decree went forth that the wise men should be slain, and they sought Daniel and his fellows to be slain. Then Daniel answered the counsel and wisdom to Arioch, the captain of the king's guard, which was gone forth to slay the wise men of Babylon. He answered and said to Arioch, the king's captain, why is the decree so hasty from the king? Then Arioch made known the thing to Daniel. Now apparently word had not reached Daniel about what was going on. He probably was still in training with the other young men and had not been consulted, had not been advised to appear before the king as the others had. And so when he heard about it, he was shocked and surprised. So Daniel went in and desired of the king that he would give him time, that he would show the king the interpretation. Then Daniel went to his house, made the thing known to Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, his companions, that they would desire mercies of the God of heaven concerning this secret, that Daniel and his fellows should not perish with the rest of the wise men of Babylon. He did the wisest thing he could do. He called a prayer meeting. He got his 3 friends, and he said, we need to pray about this. We need to go to the Lord. We need to ask him to reveal the dream to us and the interpretation to us, so that not only our lives can be spared, but the lives of all of these other men. Now, I want to tell you that that's the recourse that we have in a serious situation. In the 18th chapter of Matthew, at verses 19 and 20, it says, if 2 of you shall agree on earth, touching anything that they desire, of my Father who is in heaven, it shall be done unto you. For where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst. So when you face something that's very serious in your life, get some of your friends together and ask them to pray for you. And the prayer of faith, the Bible says, will save the sick. If we ask anything in his name, he will do it, that the Father might be glorified in the Son. And so Daniel was wise enough to know that what he needed to do was to turn to the Lord. Then was the secret revealed unto Daniel in a night vision. Then Daniel blessed the God of heaven. He was thankful for God's answer. Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of God forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. He has all wisdom, he has all power, he is omniscient, he is omnipotent, and he changes the times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. He reveals the deep and secret things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. I thank you and praise you, O God of my fathers, who has given me wisdom and might, and has made known unto me now what we desire of thee. For thou hast now made known unto us the king's matter. Notice Daniel didn't take all the credit for it. He didn't say, Lord, you showed it to me. He said, you've shown it to us. We've made this a matter of prayer. And in your infinite wisdom and in your power, you have seen fit right now to make this thing known to us. Therefore Daniel went in unto Arioch, whom the king had ordained to destroy the wise men of Babylon. He went and said unto him, Destroy not the wise men of Babylon. Bring me in before the king, and I will show unto the king the interpretation. Then Arioch brought in Daniel before the king in haste, and said unto him, I found a man of the captives of Judah that will make known unto the king the interpretation. Well, now he hadn't found Daniel. Daniel had found him. But isn't it just like many of us that we want to get credit for something good that's going to happen? And so Arioch wanted to look good before the king, and he said, King, I found somebody. There is a man that can interpret your dream, and I found him. And the king answered and said to Daniel, whose name was Belteshazzar, Are you able to make known unto me the dream which I have seen and the interpretation thereof? Daniel answered in the presence of the king and said, The secret which the king has demanded cannot the wise men, the astrologers, the magicians, the soothsayers show unto the king. But, now here's this important little word again, but. They can't do it, but there is a God in heaven that reveals secrets and makes known to the king Nebuchadnezzar what shall be in the latter days. Thy dream and the visions of thy head upon thy bed are these. As for thee, O king, thy thoughts came into thy mind upon thy bed, what should come to pass hereafter. And he that reveals secrets makes known to thee what shall come to pass. But as for me, this secret is not revealed to me for any wisdom that I have more than any living, but for their sakes that shall make known the interpretation to the king, and that thou mightst know the thoughts of my heart. Now, I want you to notice that Daniel is emphasizing, I know what the dream is, I know what the interpretation is, but keep in mind it's for hereafter. It's not something that's going to be fulfilled right now. He uses the word the latter days there. And so these things that God is revealing through Daniel are still, many of them, in the future. I think we're probably living in the latter days, the days leading up to the sudden coming of Christ and our rapture out of this world. And so it's for the hereafter. They will come to pass in the latter days. Now here is the dream. Thou, O king, saw and beheld a great image. This great image, whose brightness was excellent, stood before you, and the form thereof was terrible. This image's head was of fine gold, his breast and his arms of silver, his belly and his thighs of brass, his legs of iron, and his feet part of iron and part of clay. You saw till a stone was cut out without hands, which smote the image upon his feet that were of iron and clay, and broke them to pieces. Then was the iron, the clay, the brass, the silver, and the gold broken to pieces together, and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, and no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Now, Nebuchadnezzar must have been absolutely amazed. That's exactly what he dreamed. And he recognized it immediately. And so Daniel certainly vindicated his God. Only a God could reveal a dream like that. And Nebuchadnezzar actually, later on we'll see, recognizes that. So here is the strange dream. He saw a great image. The image had a head of gold. It had shoulders, chest, arms of silver. It had an abdomen and thighs of brass, had legs of iron, and it had feet of iron mingled with clay. And a great stone that was cut out without hand fell on the image, crushed it, ground it into powder, and the wind came and blew the powder all away, and the stone began to grow and enlarge until it filled the whole earth. That's the dream. Now let's look at the interpretation. This is the dream, and we will tell the interpretation thereof before the king. Thou, O king, art a king of kings. For the God of heaven has given thee a kingdom, power, and strength, and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven has he given into your hand, and has made you ruler over them all. You are this head of gold. And after you shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee, and another third kingdom of brass, which shall bear rule over all the earth. And the fourth kingdom shall be strong as iron, for as much as iron breaks in pieces and subdues all things. And as iron that breaks all things shall it break in pieces and bruise. And whereas you saw the feet and toes, part of potter's clay and part of iron, the kingdom shall be divided. But there shall be in it of the strength of the iron, for as much as you saw the iron mixed with miry clay. And as the toes of the feet were part of iron and part of clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly broken. And whereas you saw iron mixed with miry clay, they shall mingle themselves with the seed of men, but they shall not cleave one to another, even as iron is not mixed with clay. Now, interestingly, here we have an outline, hundreds of years before it happened, of Gentile world history. Nebuchadnezzar was the head of gold, the Babylonian Empire, a very wealthy empire, very rich. But it was not strong, even as gold is a soft metal. But he was wealthy. And Daniel said, after your empire, there's going to come another empire that's represented by the silver in the chest and arms of the image. Now, silver is stronger than gold, but it's not as valuable. And we know from history, as we look back, that following the Babylonian Empire, there was the Medo-Persian Empire. It was coming into power when Daniel died some 70 years after this. And it was Medo-Persian. It was two kingdoms that were combined into one. And just as the body has two arms, it was the Medo-Persian Empire. Then we know again from history that the empire that followed that was the Grecian Empire. Later on in the book, he's going to bring this to our attention under different symbolism and will actually name Greece in this book, hundreds of years before Greece, under Alexander, became a power in this world. And so he said the abdomen and the thighs of the image represent another kingdom of brass. Now keep in mind, the metals are getting stronger, but they're becoming less valuable. Then he said after that there will be another empire, and it's represented by legs of iron. After the Grecian Empire came the Roman Empire. And again, just as a body has two legs, there was a point when the Roman Empire was divided into eastern and western divisions. One of the capitals was at Rome, the other was at Constantinople. And so these kingdoms have come and gone. Babylonian, Medo-Persian, the Grecian, the Roman. Now he said, in the feet of the image, in the 10 toes, there is iron that is mingled with clay. And so the only remaining world power before Jesus comes, because the rock that is cut out without hands is the Lord Jesus himself. And when he comes as the rock of our salvation, when he comes as the rock of ages, he is going to crush all human government. The kingdoms of this world will become the kingdom of our Christ and of his God. And the stone that crushes world government will grow and increase until it fills the whole earth. And of that kingdom, As we see, there will be no end. So let's read on now for just a bit further, and then we'll come back and comment on that a bit more. Now he says, in the days of these kings shall the God of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. And the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. For as much as you saw that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, that it broke in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation is sure. So he makes it clear to Nebuchadnezzar that God is in control, and that God is the one who raises up kings and put down kings, and God raises up empires and puts down empires. God is in control of what's going on in this world. And there is coming a kingdom, the millennial kingdom of Christ, that will last for 1,000 years. And then when he delivers up the kingdom to God, God will be in control of his universe entirely and completely. So it's thrilling to look forward to that. We become disturbed and upset as we see the things that are going on in our world just now. Wars that are breaking out all around us, famine and pestilence, and things that man has no control over. But God's in control. And there's a reason for these things. All of these things have to come to pass. They all have to fall in place in order for everything to build up, as God says it will be hereafter. In his foreknowledge, he knows all about it. Then King Nebuchadnezzar fell upon his face and worshiped Daniel, and commanded that they should offer an oblation and sweet odors unto him. The king answered unto Daniel and said, Of a truth it is that your God is a God of gods, and a Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets, seeing you could reveal this secret. It had made an impression on Nebuchadnezzar. None of his wise men, his counselors, his soothsayers, his magicians could find an answer, could tell him what he dreamed or what it meant. And now Nebuchadnezzar realizes that there is a true God, the God that Daniel is serving, the God that Daniel is worshiping. And you wonder, when we come a bit later to the end of Nebuchadnezzar's life, if God didn't make a believer out of him. And there's some who feel like it might well be that when we get to glory, Nebuchadnezzar might be there. He was a ruthless king. You can tell that because he was able to say, if you don't tell me what I dreamed and what it means, I'll have all of you put to death, and I'll have all of your families put to death. He was an absolute monarch. His word was law. If he said, kill that man, he was killed. If he said, spare that man, he was spared. He didn't answer to anybody. He was in complete control and charge. He had all of the authority in his own hand. But God had given it to him. And he learns that lesson too, in a very severe way, a bit later on. Verse 48. Then the king made Daniel a great man, and gave him many great gifts, and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon, and chief of the governors over all the wise men of Babylon. Then Daniel requested of the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel sat in the gate of the king. Daniel wanted to be sure that his friends were rewarded too. He did not do what he had done for reward. He had done it to serve the Lord. But the Lord honored him in his faithfulness by giving him a place of great power and authority. He had a tremendous influence in Babylon. He sat in the gate, the king's gate, which meant that he was probably the chief advisor to Nebuchadnezzar. because Nebuchadnezzar recognized in him that he was a man of God and that he had a God that he could turn to find answers to all the big problems that they were going to deal with. Now I want to go back to that image again for a few minutes and ask ourselves, is there any evidence that the time of the feet with the 10 toes may be coming into existence? That is going to be the last form of world government before Jesus comes to establish his millennial reign. And so, as men have read this chapter and meditated in it and prayed over it, they have been looking for a time when there might be a grouping of nations that had once been a part of the Roman Empire, because the iron is still present in the feet and the toes. Not as strong as the Roman government and empire had been, weakened by the clay, but still the power of Rome is present. So when NATO was organized, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, Bible students began to ask themselves, could this be it? And many thought that it might be. But more recently, there has come into existence the European Common Market, or now called the European Union. Now, there are more than 10 nations in it. For a long time, it took to build up to 10, and then it surpassed 10. But I want you to keep in mind that a bit later in the book, as we have a different representation of this, there is a beast that has a little horn, and the little horn is broken off and displaces 3. And it might bring it back to 10, because there are those who are saying there are nations within the European Union that are not happy with it. They're dissatisfied with it. England is one of those. They have adopted a common currency called the euro. When you go to Europe now, you don't have to change your currency into the currency of the different countries. You get euro dollars, and you can spend them in about 8 or 10 of the European countries. They are coming to the place where they are doing away with having to have a passport to go from one country to another. The borders are more open. They're banding together to make trade agreements with the United States and Japan, and they're becoming stronger as every day goes by. And so I think we have every right to wonder if perhaps the European Union may not be this last form of government. Let me just inject one other thought. A man advanced a theory a while back that I think has some merit to it, and even more when I just read an article this week that the United States has decided that we need to form another early warning system to let us know if we may be attacked by missiles from North Korea or from Russia. And Congress is going to be discussing this. Now, the theory that this man has is that when the Lord returns, suddenly and unexpectedly, and receives from this world his own, and those of us, of course, who live in the United States, where there are more Christians per capita than any other place on the earth, can you imagine the confusion when that happens? Christian pilots just taken out of airplanes and they're crashing all over the place. Christians driving automobiles and trucks down the highway, and suddenly they're gone, and those vehicles pile up on the interstates. Fires will break out in the major cities. If we have a Christian president, he'll be gone. Christian congressmen will be gone. We will be thrown into the worst state of confusion that you could possibly imagine. His theory is that when the North Koreans, the Russians, whoever, see that happening, they'll say, this is the time for us to attack. They're in such confusion, they won't even realize that we've launched our missiles at them. But we will be warned in time to be able to launch a counterattack, and we'll launch our missiles against them. They'll pass each other over the Atlantic. And in just hours of time, the two major powers of the world will be completely knocked out. And it will be the perfect timing for a man to step to the front and say, if you'll just give me the authority and the power, I can bring order out of this confusion. And it would be the perfect timing for the Antichrist to come on the scene. And where more a likely place than out of the European Union? Some strong leader who would be able to do it. So it certainly is something to think about, isn't it? And for us to contemplate. And for us to tell others about. Because the Lord could come back at any moment. He could come back tonight. Oh, if I were to ask you how many of you think the Lord's coming back tonight, you wouldn't raise your hand. I guess I wouldn't raise mine with you. We don't think he is. But in the Olivet Discourse, he said, in such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man is coming. It's going to be quickly, unexpectedly, at any moment, in the twinkling of an eye. So what's the important thing? To be ready. To be ready. If it's going to happen before this night is over, are you ready to go to meet the Lord? If this auditorium were just suddenly emptied, would you be going with us or would you be left behind? It's too important a matter to take a chance. To say, well, I guess he's coming back, but I don't think he's coming tonight. I don't think he's coming this week. I think I've got plenty of time to accept Christ. I'm going to do it some other time. My friend, I urge you to do it tonight. Don't leave this place without the Lord Jesus. For when he comes back and you're not ready, you'll never, ever be saved. This is the day of salvation. This is the inviting time. This is the time when you can invite him into your heart. Even tomorrow may be too late. So as we join in singing our invitation hymn tonight, Pass Me Not, O Gentle Savior. If you're here without Christ, oh, let me plead with you. Let me beg you to not put it off another night. To come right now and say, I'm not going to leave this place until I've settled it with the Lord. I want to know absolutely and positively that if he comes back at any moment, I'll be ready. I think we're approaching the time. And certainly with every day that goes by, we're a day closer than we have been. And it may be that God has impressed you to be a part of what he's doing here at this church, and you'd like to bring your membership tonight. Maybe you haven't followed the Lord in believer's baptism, and you want to do that. So we want to give the opportunity as we stand and join in singing our invitation. I'll meet you here if you'll come tonight.